So thanks for just getting together on the call. I figured over the last probably 5 years of just getting to know a bunch of different 30 under 30 honorees, that if you're making an application, I figure I'd share any, I don't know if I call it advice, but just experiences that I've had or things that you'd like to know about the process.
Oh, I wanted to do it last year, but that didn't work out. You know, I kind of got cold feet, but I'm for sure I needed more under my belt, I felt like. And so this year I feel a lot better.
How old are you now?
I am 27.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think one of the suggestions I would mention is that it seems, I can't draw a direct correlation to this, but it seems like people tend to get recognized by Realtor Magazine as 30 under 30s if they've applied more than once. So I would definitely say, even if you don't get it this year, apply this year and then continue applying. I applied twice before I got it. So the first year I did it, I kind of slammed an application together and did it pretty quick, and I did not get selected either for the final 50 or for the actual 30 that are recognized in the magazine. And then the next year I did. So I think that's an important thing is apply more. And I think your connection to Rogers is going to be helpful. Rogers is really a celebrity in that group. And I think that they'll have a pretty strong look at your application just because of your association with Rogers. Are you going to have Rogers do a testimonial or a letter of recommendation for you?
Yeah, so I've asked, I've requested from Rogers, and then Joe Mazza, who's our YPN, he's not our chair, but like staff liaison. And so those are my two people that I was gonna have.
Okay, well that's great. I think that both of those connections will be phenomenal. My year that I had applied and actually got recognized, I think I was only able to do. Was I able to do two? I was. Yeah, I had two people. I had my broker owner, and I had a client of mine that was also a realtor. Both of them do the letter of recommendation. So much of your application has to do with your story, not with your production. So I know you can't go backward in time, but I would say put your application together regardless of what type of year you had from a sales standpoint, because they look at so many other things besides the actual production. Production is just one way. I mean, they don't want to have, I think there is a limit on, you have to have a certain production. I think it was 3 million when I applied. I don't know if they've changed that, but I definitely would say that it's not just about your production. It's so much more about your story.
Okay.
One other suggestion I'd have for you is that when I did not get recognized the first year, so that was 2010, early 2011 was when the application was due. I called Rob Reuter from NAR. He's one of the communications director. I think he is the communications director now, but he's heavily involved in the 30 under 30 piece for Realtor Magazine. And he's one of the people who got our alumni reunion set up last year. And so anyways, long story short, I called Rob and I said, hey, I didn't get recognized, and I'm not saying why didn't I get recognized, but what can I do to make my application better? And he said, it's really interesting. There's a few things that you can do to change your application that they look for. And then there's a few things that you can't really change about yourself, but they do look for in a well-balanced group. And so he was mentioning to me, like, for one, they can't have all females in the group. They can't have all males. So your gender, depending on the group of people, is going to matter. You can't change that, obviously. Ethnicity is important. They can't have all one slant one way or one slant the other way. So that's, I think, important. Whether you're part of a national firm or a boutique is important. You can't have everybody from RE/MAX. You can't have everybody from Keller Williams. So they want to have a balanced group. What geographic market you're from is going to matter. They can't have everybody from Texas, right? So I think that's probably one of those things that'll be tougher for you, because I'd imagine there's probably quite a few people from Texas that'll apply, but you can't change that, right? You're from Texas.
Right.
For me, one of the advantages was I was a commercial realtor, and they don't recognize a lot of commercial realtors because a lot of commercial realtors don't apply. So I think if you've got any commercial real estate experience or any experience that's outside of just regular residential sales, that's important to highlight in your application. And then there's a huge emphasis on YPN involvement. So if you are involved in YPN, I think it's really smart that you've got that that connection with YPN locally. That you want to use that to your advantage, I would think.
Okay.
What other questions do you have about the process of applying?
So, I mean, from your experience, I know like sales is one thing, and you mentioned your story.
Mm-hmm.
As far as like just other stuff that they look for, you know, is there anything else? I mean, involved. So, sales story, involvement. Anything that I may be missing, just like extracurricular activities, I guess.
Sure. I mean, they're looking for a well-balanced group. Like I said, sales it's not the number one priority, although it is a priority. I think that your involvement, if you're involved as a team member versus a broker owner versus an individual agent, I think that's important. I think like anything else, I mean, they're trying to highlight a group of people that are going to create interest and sell the magazine. So I think that the larger your social network is, the better. And I think they look into that. I don't know if that's a defining reason why you are or are not recognized, but you know, obviously that's an important part of it is they want people to read the magazine. So your outreach, I think, is going to be an important thing. A video, the year that I did it, I think was either the first or the second year that they allowed video applications. And I think a killer video is really, really important. And I don't know if that's something that, you know, nowadays it's a lot easier to get that done. And I sound like an old grandpa saying that, but you know, I think that it's important to try to use video because just like we are right here, video shares so much more about who someone is. It's a three-dimensional format as opposed to just written. And I think that if you can do, I feel like ours had to be less than 2 minutes. So I think if you can do a quick video, and the cool thing about it is that there's so many videos out there already, Chasen, that you can look at. My video's up on YouTube. A bunch of the previous honorees, their videos are up there. So you can kind of do what a buddy of mine loves to say, do some R&D, some replication and duplication. And just look at what you like and maybe use some of those components in your video if they allow that. I haven't looked at the application this year, but if they allow that, I would say you got to do a video.
Yeah, I think last year when I looked at it, it did allow the video. So that's something that I was wondering about because I've looked up a few of them. Funny that you say that. I've looked up a few of them. I've seen some like camera phone, and I've seen some where they did like full on production, and I'm like, whoa, you know, which is the right way to go. I mean, I have my YouTube video camera, but I've done like super high quality videos, but then I've done a lot of camera, you know, so I don't want to, you know, I mean, I want to present something very nice, you know, at the end of the day, but I don't want to go over the top. And that kind of leads me into another question because I heard you mention social media and stuff. And yeah, I do a lot on social media, but I didn't know if it was safe to, you know, just try to say, oh, I do this, and the podcast and the YouTube and this and all that kind of stuff and make it try to seem like I'm just like all that in a bag of chips, you know. And, you know, and I wanted to come off very still humbling and, you know, nice. But yeah, I have done a lot of that stuff and I still currently do it and enjoy it. So, you know, I just got to find a balance, I guess, on how to present that.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the balance on that is not that you're doing it, but what it does for you and what it does for your clients. And that would be, I think, the big part of it is that just from my personal reflection, again, I'm not a representative for Realtor Magazine or anything. It's just kind of what I've observed is that, you know, the people who are making changes are important. They want to highlight those folks. The people that are, you know, utilizing mentors. My mentor was a 30 under 30 in 2005. So, I mean, I think bringing up the fact that you're personally trained and you work with Rogers, I think is real important. And then I would just be genuine. You know, I think like anything else, people want to gravitate towards authenticity. They want to make sure that someone has got the ability to demonstrate that they're a real human being on the other side of it. So I don't think it's so much how many followers you have or how many friends you have, or, pretty much everybody in the world is on Facebook at this point. So it's more just how do you use social media to help your clients? And, I think that's probably the important component of it. And don't say you use social media if they do some research and find out that you're not really that active on it. I think that would be the other thing too. Nowadays you can check everything.
Right.
And then back to the video. One thing that I just was thinking about is on the production style of the video. I don't think you have to have it done professionally. I did, and I just happened to have a friend that was a film producer. I went to film school and everything, and he did. It wasn't like a high-end production. It was a pretty simple production, but he was asking me all the questions. And I think that's probably the important thing, is instead of creating content that you would say, oh, this is how I feel like it's interesting, I think if you can have someone interview you that would maybe provide a different perspective, I think that was helpful for me. And you could tell that I was answering questions, but you didn't hear the questions in my video. Right. So I would say, just if you want to check out my video, not to plug myself, but that's an example of what a professionally plugged one looks like, or professionally done one looks like.
Okay. Now, what about your actual writing of the answers to the questions? Like, how elaborate were you, and how deep did you get in your writings?
Well, it's tough. The first thing that I would say is all of my answers to my questions are on my blog, and I had sent you a link to one of those links, I think. So you could just look at them, not to copy them or anything, but just to look at them to see how I answered them. When I talked to Rob, and I apologize for the background noise there. When I talked to Rob on the phone that year that I did not get considered for the 30 under 30 piece, he said it's not so much about they're not looking for a specific thing in your answers, but what they do want to make sure of is that you can spell. And that sounds like that's probably pretty juvenile, but if you have misspelled words, if you're not using correct grammar, if you're using slang, they don't like that, especially since most of the people that work for Realtor Magazine have journalism backgrounds and have degrees in journalism. So you want to probably have someone proofread it. And that would be just a suggestion overall, is before you submit your application, have multiple people look at it and just give their feedback. The other part of it too is they limit the amount of characters that you can put in each answer. So I think they limited it down to like 150 words per answer. So you really have to be brief and to the point. And one of the other things Rob had said to me when I was asking him how to do a better application is he said, make sure you answer every question. That's a big problem for them if you don't answer all the questions. They immediately bounce people out of the application process that don't answer questions, or they give answers that they feel like aren't appropriate given the level of the question. So, I mean, like one of the questions that I remember is, do you have any ethics violations? That's a big deal if you're a realtor. And I said, no, I'm proud to report that I've never had any ethics violations, period. So there's only one sentence, but I didn't just say no. So I would say that, try to demonstrate your personality in your answers. And I think, again, make sure that you have a couple of people review your answers just to make sure that they feel like they're well thought and there's not any silly typos or something that would be, a negative on you.
Okay.
The other thing I'd say is you can start putting your application together now. I did two things. I did a Word doc of all of the questions, and I would write those out so that I could kind of freeform it. But then you can also continue to save your application all the way up through the January deadline. So you're in good shape prior to that January deadline to just continue to have your answers up in the portal on Realtor Magazine's website. Mm-hmm. So that'd be another suggestion something that I did was just go ahead and get that stuff put together now.
Okay.
The year that I didn't get recognized, surprise, surprise, I crammed and did it like in 2 days or something like that. And I think I submitted my application on the day of the deadline. The year that I was recognized, which was the next year, I spent a lot more time and energy. And I, of course, I had a year of time to think about it. And I also had the advantage of being 29, which they do give a lot of consideration to the 29-year-old applicants. Don't think that's going to be a negative for you since you're not 29 yet, but just realize that they give a really strong look at the 29-year-olds because it's their last opportunity.
Right. All right. What about how different was your application from the first time and the second time? Like, is it totally? I mean, I know you have to make corrections and like answer questions differently, but you know, in a year, did you have like that significant amount of changes that you were talking about different things, or just rewording everything you said before?
No, I definitely did have some significant changes to the point that it wasn't really necessary to redo my application like verbatim from the year prior. I really had to go through and make significant changes because my story really changed. The year that I was recognized was in 2012, which was for production and for experiences done in 2011. So what happened in 2011, which was different than in 2010, was, you know, my wife and I had twins that year. I changed companies. I left the brokerage firm that I kind of grew up in, and that was where my mentor that was a 30 under 30 was. So I left that firm, and then my brother passed away that year. And so there was all these things that happened in like 90 days. And, you know, I think I think that was it wasn't the reason I got recognized, but it was the main storyline in my excerpt that's in the magazine. So, you know, you can't manufacture that, right? I mean, 2010, none of that stuff had happened, right? So we didn't even know that we were going to have twins, you know, early part of 2010. Obviously, I had no clue that my brother would pass away, and I was still at the other firm. So yeah, I mean, a lot of that stuff just changes. So I'd say, you know, if you don't get recognized this year, keep your answers, keep them in a Word doc, keep them handy, but I would not recycle the answers because I know for sure Rob keeps a file of all the prior applicants if they surface again. And so you don't want to click paste into your application, you know? So yeah, I think that's a good question to ask because it's important. You don't want to have a situation where you're just copy and pasting your answers from one year to another.
So would you say that you had a stronger focus on your actual business, like your business, your team, sales and stuff like that? Or did you focus a lot of like your stuff more so on your personality and clients and feelings and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on the person that's applying. My general style, my personality is to more come from a personal perspective, not from a, here's the deals I've done and here's the clients I had. You know, so I that just speaks better to me to speak from my personal vantage point and my personal perspective. And so that's more genuine because that's how I particularly just that's how I work. And so I think for you, you're going to have to say, okay, what's my normal operating procedure? You know, do I talk more like a business person, or am I more like kind of the small business owner within a larger firm, and my clients and friends feel that way? I think one of the more humbling things to do, but one of the better things to do, is to have one of your clients talk to you. Just give them a call and say, hey, look, I'm going to submit this application. It's like a college-style essay. It's a really intense deal. And can you tell me from your words, Mr. or Mrs. Client, what your perceptions are of me? And obviously pick a good client of yours, someone that you've done business with, but they will give you guidance and advice that you would never be able to conjure up on your own. There's an old saying, and I love it, that, you know, it's often difficult to read the label on a bottle when you're sitting inside the bottle. And it's so much easier for others to evaluate you when they're looking at you versus you to self-evaluate, you know?
Right. Oh, that's good.
What other questions do you have?
How has everything been since you've got this award and, you know, been featured and everything? Like, does I mean, like, what normally happens?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like fun stuff, appearances and gigs, and
Yeah.
just things take off.
You know, everybody handles it a little
Yeah.
differently. One of the things I would say is next time you see Rogers, ask him about his perception of me, because again, he's going to have a different viewpoint than I will. But in 2012, when I was recognized, there's obviously the initial excitement about being in the magazine, you know, and just being able to share that out on social media is a big deal. I don't think that after the first month or two, I really did much else with it. Besides, I mean, I did some postcards to my client base. I'm an old-fashioned geographic farmer, so I did some postcards to my clients. Obviously, one of the things I did leading up to receiving the recognition was that I put everything on my blog, because I felt like if I was recognized, that, you know, I'd want to have all that stuff as content that was on my blog. It helped build my blog. And then, you know, I think for me, it took me about 2 years to really figure out how to leverage the 30 under 30 network. There's so much of it that is outward recognition and legitimacy with your client base, but that kind of wears off after, you know, maybe a year. And it certainly wears off once you're 34 and you're no longer a quote unquote 30 under 30. So, you know, it wears off as you get older, but what hasn't worn off and is actually amplified for me is, you know, my choice to really help run these monthly conference calls with our alumni group. The book that I'm writing is largely based on the content from my 30 under 30 alumni group that I interact with. Some of the traveling I've done across the U.S. has been really a lot of fun based on the 30 under 30 groups. So those are the type of things that I would have never been able to predict on my own. You know, obviously getting recognized in a national magazine is a huge accomplishment. And to be one of 30 people, there are over 600 people every year that apply. And if you think about it, there's 1.2 million realtors across the U.S. So just to be in that small subset is a really, really valuable thing. But I think probably for me, the bigger benefits have happened a few years later. And being able to go to the reunion in 2015, that you know, that was the first time I met Rogers. I didn't know who Rogers was prior to that. And that was a real big deal. Being able to you know, kind of rub elbows with people like Bo Mankitti, who's from Washington, D.C. He was on my podcast. I would have never had that opportunity last year if I wasn't a part of this alumni group and didn't go to the alumni events. There's so many people that I think will regret or lament when they don't make it to an alumni event. So I think that those are the things that are really impactful that I would have never expected. Those are the things you just never even planned for. But I think for you, if you are recognized, circle back with me, because there's a large impact that other people have experienced that are a part of our alumni group that I didn't necessarily use on the initial press release and on the initial launch of that recognition. So if Realtor Magazine selects you, make sure to circle back to me.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. I think that's some good stuff. I really appreciate all of that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah.
I saw you're wearing one of Rogers' t-shirts there.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. I like that.
Yeah.
I got to get myself one of those t-shirts.
I know, and he gets the like dry fit.
Oh,
so
nice.
super comfortable. Yeah, I know. Where are you at? Is it not cold outside?
Oh yeah, man, it's freezing out here. So I'm in Denver, and I'm outside my office building right now. And fortunately, it's actually sunny right now. We had 3 or 4 days worth of just cold weather. I mean, like I think that last night we were like -5 degrees, and you know, just really really cold weather. So fortunately, today it's going to be up to 50 degrees.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
oh,
it's nice. So in Denver, there's a saying that says, if you don't like the weather, just wait a few minutes because it changes so quickly. In the Denver weather, we'll have days in January that are 65 degrees. Yeah. I've had Christmases that are in the 70s, and then you'll have an April snowstorm that'll bring 15 inches of snow. So it's kind of wild how that goes.
What?
Yeah. How about you guys in Dallas? What's the weather like there right now?
It's so cold. Well, not negative anything, but Yesterday it was really cold. It was, I want to say the low was like 20 something and the high we were in the mid 30s. But
No
today I think
kidding.
it's like 40 something, 42, 43. But it's super cold outside. But yeah, it's, I don't know. We're experiencing that same chill. I think a lot of people are. So
Yeah.
crazy.
Well, I think that I think it's welcomed, at least here in Denver. We had like 6 or 7 months where we were above 40 degrees for our high, and so this, I mean, for a cold weather town, we had been really, really unseasonably warm. So it's a good thing for sure.
Yeah.
If it didn't come across during this
Wow.
kind of discussion, I think I want to make sure to make it come across. Don't start your application for this type of recognition a few days prior to it. I mean, I would start, if you can't do it today, I'd start it this weekend if I were you. And I would just work through those questions. And if you've got a loved one or, you know, a special person that can call you up on the phone and ask you those questions, and listen to what your answers are, because oftentimes your answer is not going to change. It's just going to be the way that you write it and the way that you craft that message. So I would do as much as you can between now and the application deadline to just work through those questions. And I've always found that I do a lot of interviews, like on my podcast and just different stuff. And I've always found that as a realtor, it's much easier for me to speak than to write. And so if someone just asks me the questions casually, it's like, oh, that's an easy answer. Here's what the answer is. And so I would try to compartmentalize those questions into, you know, shorter discussions that you have with people, and have people kind of bounce those questions off of you, because I think the answers will come true, and just write quick notes on what you're saying.
Okay. I'll definitely do that. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Do you have any other questions for me?
No, I think I'm good. I mean, awesome. I really appreciate you taking the time out to even do this.
Oh, you're welcome. That's, you know, Rogers has been such a special impact to me in just some of my young kind of journey here. And he's taken a lot of interest in me. And so anything I can do to help him, and obviously getting to know you has been really, really fun. So it's my pleasure. I really don't mind it at all. And I would say if you don't get recognized this time around, stay with it, because second and third time applicants get a much, much heavier emphasis. So there's going to be people this year that have applied for the second or the third time. And so if you don't get it, don't worry, just stay persistent with it. And I will tell you, this is a big deal. So if you do get recognized, it's a huge, huge honor.
Okay. Well, the journey begins. So.
Well, Jason, man, blessings to you. Have an awesome weekend. Have a Merry Christmas. And if you have questions that come up, man, just shoot me a text. I'd be happy to chat with you about it.